It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Grind Line here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, in the host chair again for this week, joined in by my regular line mates, Devin Little and Delaney Reimer. Welcome back. She's not been on the show for a while, but her locker stall's always here, so she's back on the show. First of all, Devin, how's it going? Trade deadline just around the corner. How's it going? We haven't had a show for 2 weeks, but how's it been?
It's been good in my neck of the woods. I'm very eager to see the end of all these Larkin rumors one way or another. Deadline can't get here soon enough, not only because we'll have a lot to talk about, but because certain rumors will be put to bed one way or another.
For sure. And also, like I said, Delaney's back. How's it going? How's it been since we've last seen you on the show?
It's been good. It's been pretty busy. Worked at the Super Bowl last week. That was pretty cool, I'd say. And then just grad school applications. Those are all done. So I'm happy to be back.
There we go. Yeah. So, Red Wings are they're doing really well right now. So we actually have some positive stuff to talk about, and some news that's happened already as well. So let's get right into it with our usual first segment, one good, one bad for the last 2 weeks. We haven't had a show for 2 weeks. So let's start with you, Delaney, since you're back after a while. How's it? One good, one bad for the last 2 weeks.
I'm going to have to go with one of the biggest ones in the room right now. It's kind of a 2-in-1 combo, actually, because my bad is Lucas Raymond is on IR. He's out, but then Vrana was called back up. So one good, one bad. I guess they cancel out at the end of the day, but
yeah, I mean, you get one. Yeah, it is. It's like it's a good and a bad. It's a big combo deal there. But Raymond had a pretty good season, but it's bad that he's got hurt now. And hopefully Vrana can, get back in the lineup and get some goals, get his confidence back in the NHL, and maybe stay up here too. So we'll see what happens with that. Devin, over to you. What's one good, one bad for the last 2 weeks?
I'm going to do two goods because I'm a cheater and I can do that. First one is going to be Mo Zator. Since the calendar flipped to 2023 specifically, he's kind of shaken that sophomore slump. I think he's looking more and more like that kid we all fell in love with last season. And then over his last 7 games, he's got points in 6 of them. So he's producing. He's not, there's that clip going around from last night. Well, from that game against the Oilers where he's containing McDavid. That is very hard to do for even the most veteran defenseman in the league. So for Mo Zator to be doing that, I think it's got to make you very excited about what he can do as he continues to develop as an NHLer. And then the other good I want to highlight, it's got to be Dylan Larkin. He's playing like a man possessed basically since the All-Star break. I think that it's very obvious that man wants his contract sooner rather than later. He's been putting the team on his back. He seems to be the only one that consistently finds the score sheet on a nightly basis. And I kind of debated this, heading into the season, whether or not he was their best forward. He's their best forward. It's clear as day. He's their best forward still. So good to see him playing like that and being a nightly contributor. My one bad, Delaney kind of stole it. Raymond, choo-choo. He's on the mend, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be gone too long, so that's good. Might even be back by the time they play Seattle on Saturday. But regardless, don't like seeing any of the young kids go down. And this is his first time missing time since he broke into the league last year. So I guess it's a good thing that he's only going to miss a couple of games, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. He's not been injury prone. So, I mean, that's, one injury in the first couple or season and a half of his NHL career is not bad. So hopefully it doesn't become a trend, but, injuries happen. For me, I mean, Larkin was torched to the Canucks in the last couple games. So I've had a front seat to his hot streak. 2 goals in each of the 2 games that they played in that home at home. He looked really good. I mean, Larkin he's always been known for his speed, but he sure burned the Canucks on a few plays there. He burst through. I mean, Pettersson was the one back, but he got through both Pettersson and the defenseman there. I can't remember who the defenseman was, but he's just really good. Like you said, Devin, he's been on a tear. Like I say, the 4 goals against the Canucks there. His line was probably the most dangerous in both games. Every time they were on the ice, they were buzzing, and the Canucks couldn't contain them. Although the Canucks haven't been able to contain most teams this year. But yeah, the Red Wings, I think they scored 11 goals in those 2 games against the Canucks. So they didn't have any trouble scoring. So that's a good for the Red Wings side. So got them on the confidence. And I don't really have a bad, because I think the Red Wings just been really good in the last. So I'll just echo the injury to Raymond, because they could probably use him over this positive streak that they've had. So there's my one good, one bad, I guess there. All right. Well, let's move on to some news, recent news that happened. And this is something I think was maybe a little unexpected. Olli Maatta signing a 2-year extension rather than being trade bait, which was a little maybe expected, that people thought maybe he could be traded at the deadline, but looks like Yzerman wants him on the team. So let's start there with that news. Devin, what do you think about the deal? That extension, what does this mean for next year? Because now he's on the roster, potentially taking up some space for a guy like Edmondson coming in. But what do you think that kind of changes for next year?
Yeah, I think I'm on record, if you go back digging into our old episodes, of saying that I kind of expected Maatta to be basically Yzerman buying a draft pick, because I figured he was going to be flipped at the deadline. So here we are, and he is now going to be the Red Wings at least another season and a half, or 2, because they signed up for 2 years. Pros of that, I don't know what I'm talking about at all. But what do I think it means? I think it means that the Red Wings found some stability down their D pairs, or at least found a source of stability. That left side is where most of their prospects are at, right? You got Edmondson, you got Johansson, you got Wallander, Sabrango, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. You get the idea. And so for them to now have, like you say, they'd have Sherratt signed for next season, and they have Maatta signed for next season. That means that theoretically there's only one spot left on that left side. And Jake Wallman needs a contract, and we've all seen how well he's fit alongside Sider. So I think that there's a pretty decent chance that he gets re-signed too. And that does make you wonder, is there a way that Edmondson's going to be on this team next year? Because he was really close to being on the team this year, and you would think that he'd get just as close, if not actually get the job done next season. I think that there's a very real chance that the Red Wings move away from having 3 lefties and 3 righties on the blue line. I think Sherratt might end up moving over to the right side to accommodate a guy like Edmondson coming into the lineup. But that's next season, and we'll have more clarity on what things will look like over the next weeks, because maybe Wallman gets traded, maybe Yzerman pulls some crazy stuff and he goes big game hunting and Edmondson is traded. I'm not betting on that, but you can't count it out, right? I think that the main takeaway from this is that the Red Wings clearly like Maatta. They clearly like what he's brought to the team. I think you can attribute a lot of Hronek's success to having Maatta there on the team. And I think that as you're building the D pairings for next season, I think knowing that you have a calm, quiet veteran guy like Maatta there that you've got locked in, that'll help you. That'll help as you maybe integrate a unproven thing like Edmondson into the lineup. But I think he just kind of earned this extension. Yzerman was happy to give it to him. And like I said, it's going to add some stability this season and heading into the near future.
Yeah, I mean, he's been more of a bottom pairing defenseman lately, like on other teams before he even came to the Red Wings. So, I mean, he was with LA for a bit there, of course, with Pittsburgh. But I think he's looked the best on the Red Wings. So, I mean, like you said, he's had some chemistry with Hronek, looks very good. And Yzerman sees that. He's like, oh, I found someone. I found a fit. So why not re-sign him? So he's a guy that's just done his job. And like you said, earned the extension. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of years. Right, Delaney, over to you. What do you think about this deal for Määttä? I mean, what does this mean for next season?
I will preface this by saying I genuinely did not know who he was before the Red Wings signed him this summer. I was really confused on that one. That was a, huh? Who was that? But he has not let me down this year in a big way. I can say that like fully confident. And there hasn't been one moment this season where I've been like, why'd we pick this guy up? He's been consistent. It might be a quiet consistency, but he's a strong defensive player who brings a lot to the defense. That stability was not a word associated with the Red Wings defense at all last year, I would say. So even having one person on that roster that can bring that stability, even if they might not be the biggest player, the flashiest, or anything like that, he's put up more goals this year than I would have expected him to do as a defenseman who I had no idea who he was. So that was a pleasant surprise. I was saying that off the bat this year. So I think it's a pretty good deal. 2 years. The Red Wings aren't a cap-strapped team by any means. The only thing, like Devin was saying, it gets complicated with Edvinsson and where does he go? What do they do with that left side? Like, I agree, maybe bumping Sherratt over to the right side to make room for him, because let's be honest, he's growing out of the AHL pretty quick. As of recently, it seems, at least. Maybe not all year, but the last few games he's been playing at a higher caliber. So there's so many tricky decisions to be made with the Red Wings roster, like overall, just everywhere. Everywhere is a hard decision. I guess maybe goaltending is the only realm where there's not a burning hard decision, because it's just kind of there.
Yeah.
But Hellberg starting tonight, that's give Husso a rest, but that'll be interesting.
Yeah, well, I didn't mention this off the top. We are recording on a Thursday rather than our normal Friday recording, so ahead of the Calgary Flames game, and then, like Devin mentioned, the Saturday against Seattle. So we're recording ahead of that. So you'll be watching this on Saturday and was like, wait, what the heck? Why aren't you talking about a Calgary game? Well, that's why. All right, well, that brings us to our first off the rush question, and this kind of ties into our defense, talking about the defense. And we're going to plug an article that just came out by Caleb Kearney, who also writes for the Red Wings here, potentially getting Jacob Chychrun, trading Ben Sherratt. So we'll start with you, Devin. Do you think that's a realistic thing that could happen? The Red Wings going after Chychrun, and could Sherratt be part of that trade?
I think it's realistic that the Red Wings could go after Chychrun, but I don't think it's realistic that Sherratt would be part of it. When the Red Wings added Sherratt in the offseason, the idea was that he was, he's 31 years old. He's being brought in as a veteran presence that would help push the Red Wings towards that playoff picture. And that's just not where the Coyotes want to be right now. If they're trading Chychrun, they're going to be trading him for a bunch of picks and a bunch of prospects, and that's neither of which are Sherratt. So I think, it makes sense for the Red Wings to target Chychrun, but it doesn't make sense for the Coyotes to bring in Sherratt as part of that deal.
Yeah, I mean, Chychrun's going to command a lot more young pieces, I think. Delaney, what do you think? Is that a realistic thing that Sherratt could be traded for Chychrun?
Not to tag team this idea, but no, I don't think so, because Chychrun's a 24-year-old. Sherratt is a 31-year-old.
Yeah.
That's already kind of iffy at best, unless they were both extremely low caliber, low performance players.
Yeah.
That's really the only time a 24-year-old and a 31-year-old would be in the same trade, I think. But just in general, even that feels like a iffy question, especially because Chychrun's not a bad player by any stretch of the term. Like,
No.
Absolutely not. He has 28 points this season. That's pretty good for a defender and a +8. So he would command a lot more value than just Ben Sherratt. No offense to Ben Sherratt. 0. But some, but not intentional.
Well, I mean, obviously there would be more included, like
Oh, yeah.
Caleb says in the article. I mean, there's going to be some more prospects. And he mentioned William Wallander, Carter Major. I mean, those are guys that the Coyotes are going to want. I mean, that's the thing, and that's why it hasn't been done yet. I think because they do want a lot. I mean, for Chychrun, and some teams. I mean, trade will get done because it seems like it's getting close, but we'll see where he ultimately goes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's before we move on, we got to pay some bills, and remind you this show is brought to you by Hockeypedia at the Hockey Writers. Great database of player stats, information, bunch of other things that you can get. If you have any questions about hockey in general, we got a whole big database getting built every day of anything you want to know about hockey. We're going to get that to be a pretty big encyclopedia of information for you guys. So make sure to check out the Hockey Writers Hockeypedia. There's a link in the show description if you want to check that out and dive into all that fun stuff we got on the website right now. All right, well, let's move on and start talking about something that we kind of wrote off a bit the last 2 weeks ago. We were saying that the Red Wings are going to sell. They're not going to make the playoffs. Well, looking at the standings, they are now 4 points out as we record. I mean, that could change. By the time you watch this, it could even be closer. 3 games in hand as well, which is another key thing to this. I mean, Delaney, we'll start with you. What do you think about this team? I mean, they're now within playoff distance, 2 weeks away from the deadline. What is Yzerman going to do? Do you think this team's for real? It could make the playoffs? And should he change his philosophy going into the deadline?
Either way I choose to say this, I'm going to be proven massively wrong, because I was so confident they weren't going to bounce back to even being in the playoff talk, but already got that wrong. It's so hard to tell with this team. It's so frustrating almost, because you rule them out and then they're 4 points away from a playoff spot on a 4-game winning streak. I don't know where it came from, but they are playing like a whole new team currently. So if they keep playing exactly like this, they could make a push. If they do anything other than that, I would be a little more hesitant. But if they do end up winning this game against the Flames tonight, that puts them 2 points closer to being in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's close.
I'm sure Devin knows exactly what I'm thinking right now. It's just kind of I don't want to say one way or the other, because then they're going to do the complete opposite. But I don't. And then there's the question of, is Yzerman going to make blockbuster moves at the deadline and then completely screw them out of a playoff spot because they got rid of some key people or something? I don't know, because 2 big names that are on the discussion board, Larkin and Brzee, you've heard them, you've seen them. The trade deadline, even if they're within a couple points of a playoff spot, Larkin's the reason why they've made such a push for that playoff spot. He has been driving the momentum behind what got them to this point. He has been part of the, wow, that looks like a whole new team out there. It's because of him. So if he were to not be here, and then the playoffs would pretty much be ruled out this year, at least in my eyes. So I don't know. It really depends on, like, A, if they can keep playing exactly how they're playing, B, who we're left with after what, that's in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, who we have in like the next 2.5 weeks, like, because it could be a whole bunch of new people, or we could be almost exactly the same. Those are the two ways this is going to go. We're either not going to have a captain, or we're going to have a captain.
Well, and that's what the interesting part of it is. I mean, when you're so close, it's a hard decision to make as a GM, looking at the standings and saying, well, do we want to gut the team and hope or not? And then, it's gonna be a hard decision. All right, Devin, over to you. What do you think? I mean, the Red Wings are 4 points out of a playoff spot, 3 games in hand. What do you make of this team right now? Do you think Yzerman has changed his philosophy going into the deadline? Is buyer now?
I don't think he's necessarily changed his philosophy. I think that it's a good time to be talking about where his philosophy is at, because considering he did just extend Määttä, and that would have been a pretty easy guy to point to and be like, oh, they'll trade him. And instead they extended him. So I think if there's any sign that maybe this deadline isn't going to be as crazy in terms of selling, that's probably it. But so what I always kind of think of when I think of teams that are in the Red Wings position is I want to say it was 2018, maybe 2017, one of the two. The St. Louis Blues were like just outside of a playoff spot, and I mean just outside. And they ended up trading Paul Stastny, and that was when they traded him to the Winnipeg Jets. And at the time, there were a lot of people that were upset about it. Even there was reports that the players were upset about it because they traded away a really important player and a team that was still very much in the playoff picture. And what it came down to was Doug Armstrong, their GM, basically said even if they made the playoffs, they weren't going to go far. Clearly they were struggling. They were in the playoff picture, but they weren't like firmly in the playoff picture. So the end of, it wasn't worth the second round bounce or the first round bounce, as opposed to what they got in that Stastny deal. And I'm pretty sure they got like a first round pick out of that deal. So he valued that first round pick more than a short playoff run. And I think that for Yzerman, he's going to end up making a similar choice. I think that he can conservatively sell, and that's kind of where I'm getting at with that Määttä comment. But I think that, I still think Bertuzzi's very much on the trade block. And I think that if the right package comes along, whether it's, a second round pick and a really good prospect, or maybe even a first round pick, I think Yzerman's going to be looking at that long and hard and deciding this is going to make the team worse. But at best, I think we can all agree on this. At best, the Red Wings are a first round, a one and done when it comes to the playoffs. They'll get in, but they aren't, they're not going to beat Boston. They're not going to beat whoever they would play. So at that point, for Yzerman, that first round pick or whatever they're going to get would be more valuable than just making the playoffs and saying you did. To kind of close this off, I think that you don't want to get too crazy. I think you do have to take the good offers that are there, but I don't think that Yzerman should get crazy, because I do think on some level you want to reward the team for being in the position they're in. And it does send a bad message. This team's been missing the playoffs now for almost a decade.
Yeah.
At some point you want, like when you're in this position where the playoffs are still within reach and we're 2 weeks out from the deadline, you want to send a message to the team that like you're proud and like you believe in them. And you don't, if you've got the team, you're sending the exact opposite message. Yes. So I think that a conservative sell is the way to go with where they're at right now. And like Delaney said, I think that their play over the next week and a half is going to heavily dictate what that deadline ends up looking like.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think he shouldn't be doing crazy stuff because they are within distance. But like you said, they're not going to be winning the cup. They're not going to go on a long playoff run. You wouldn't think. They're going to be playing some really tough teams in the first round. Like you said, Boston, if they just make it in the last wild card spot, which is looking like that's what it will be, they're playing the Boston Bruins. I mean, that's pretty much guaranteed. And even if you do somehow make into the first wild card, you're playing like probably the Carolina Hurricanes then, or something like that. So, I mean, like these are not easy teams to beat. So I'm going to say that, yeah, even if they do make it, they're a one and done, and, better off get what you can. If your team goes and offers a first round pick for Tyler Bertuzzi, you take it and you say, okay, we'll see what we can do in the playoffs, even if we do make it. If you do make it. So I do agree. I think that it will be a conservative sell at the deadline. If he does, he won't be buying a ton. If there is a deal to be made, I mean, obviously Yzerman will look at it because that's what he does. I mean, make the team better, even if it is a quote unquote buy. So
I will throw out there really quick too that and on some level he like has to do some selling because there's like Adam Ernie's in the AHL right now. Alex Nedeljkovic is in the AHL right now. And that's because, they have so many bodies that like they've had to snatch people in the AHL. That's not ideal. And I think that just to like make room for some people, whether it's prospects or they're veterans that are in the AHL right now, I think that a couple moves will happen, but it's just a matter of how big they are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Yzerman's not going to be quiet. I think he will be doing something. We'll have to see what it is. And if there is anything that's really big and newsworthy, we'll talk about everything. But if it's a really massive one that everyone will be talking about, well, we'll just have to wait and see. All right. Well, speaking of trades, let's talk about some of Yzerman's best that he's done over his tenure as a Red Wings GM. And there's been some interesting ones. Devin, we'll start with you. What's his best trade been so far as Detroit's general manager? Because like I said, there's been some interesting ones that have worked out pretty well.
Yeah, and like we were saying off camera, it's a good sign that there's more than one. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we all have a different answer to this question, and that's a good thing. I'm gonna go all the way back to his first year as the Red Wings GM. And honestly, this is like his second or third trade he ever made as the Red Wings GM, and that's got to be the Jacob Delarose for Robbie Fabry trade. And the reason why I picked that, there's, like I said, there's plenty of other answers that would be a good answer for this. I'm going with Fabry because basically Yzerman turned nothing into something. And by that, I mean, Jacob Delarose was a fine player, very defense first, fourth liner that, was out there to basically not hurt the team. Basically, that's the gist of it. And I'm pretty sure he was even a waiver pickup. I think Ken Holland was the one who picked him up on waivers, but he was a waiver pickup. So they got him for free. And then Yzerman flips him to the St. Louis Blues for Robbie Fabry. Now, Fabry, obviously, the reason why the Blues traded him is because he kind of got depth charted out of St. Louis. And he'd been injured, so he just never really had a time to establish himself in St. Louis. And well, he got the opportunity he was looking for in Detroit, and he has made the most of it. So for Yzerman to turn a fourth liner that would put up 20 points at best into a winger forward who is a top nine, who is a constant presence in the top nine when he's healthy and is good for upwards of 20 goals and 40 or 50 points a season. I think that's an easy win. And I think that's the biggest like Rumpelstiltskin turning straw into gold because you don't see trades like that usually. And I think that was Yzerman identifying a player that needed an opportunity and it could be had for cheap. And I think if the Red Wings were trading Fabry nowadays, he would go for a lot more than a Jacob Delarose type.
Yeah, that's a good choice. I think Fabry's been a really good pickup for the Red Wings, and a guy that like you say, Delarose, fine player, but I don't even think he's in the NHL right now. I think he's probably playing. I don't know where he's playing right now. I'd have to look that up. But so that means the Fabry is in the NHL and he's in, like you say, he plays in the top nine normally. And again, another player that torched the Canucks the last like those 2 games.
Sorry.
And he's been a Canuck killer too. He's played really well against any time he's played them. So again, very good pickup for Yzerman there. All right, Delaney, over to you. Do you have another pick for Yzerman's best trade since he's become GM of the Red Wings?
Yes, I do, but I'm just going to throw out that De La Rose is in the NL with HC Freeborg Gorderon, which I have never heard of before. Good for him. Didn't pan out in the NHL apparently, so I'd say that's an easy one. I'm going to have to go with the Ville Husso trade. I know that's like the most recent one of any sort of note. I mean, there are a couple more recent ones, just not very notable, but they traded a 2022 third round pick for him. That is all, which is not only one of a massive steal, I would say, like, because he wasn't worse than Binnington. He was outplaying Binnington for a solid stretch of last year.
Yeah.
He was iffy in the playoffs, and then they got him for a third round pick. Again, don't really know the Blues logic on that because you don't know who a third round pick is going to be, even in a stacked draft. So in a way that was trading nothing for something because you got an immediate payout. You got an immediate huge change in the roster, a huge change in performance, completely flipped the goaltending in Detroit on its head. He's been great this year. And I think in the broadcast last night, well, in the game against the Oilers, they were saying he's on pace to play like 60 games this year. And a goalie who's playing 60 games in a season and playing them well for a third round pick.
Yeah.
I'd say that's a pretty good one for Steve. I'm not going to lie. You can't argue with that one too much, but my runner up was going to be the Nick Leddy trade where they got Sundqvist and Wallman.
Yeah.
And a second round pick for Witowski and Nick Leddy. That because, again, traded an AHL player and a guy who did some things, but not a lot of them, for 2 players that are a pretty steady presence on the team. And a 2023 second round pick who will probably be another really strong prospect because, again, it's a loaded draft. So we'll see how that one pans out after the draft, like completely, but that's a runner up for sure. Because Wallman, he's been great, especially with Zator. Yeah. And then Sundqvist, he's doing the thing. He's scoring goals. He's there, not causing issues necessarily. So
yeah,
I'd say those 2.
Yeah, you took my one, but I'll take a different one. Like I say, there's so many. I like the Wallman one. I think Wallman, like you said, he's been really good with Zator, and he's not old either. He's pretty, under 30. Still has a lot of hockey left in him. So yeah, we'll see what happens with him with the Red Wings too, because he's got to be re-signed as well. Mm-hmm. So I'll pick a different one. Like I say, we could pick quite a few. But I like the Sam Gagner trade way back when. I mean, yes, like we were talking off camera. Yeah, at the time it wasn't cheered by everyone because Athanasiou was a pretty good young player at the time. But right now he's been all over the place. I mean, he's been pretty good. I mean, he's with the Chicago right now. He's playing pretty well, but I don't think he's panned out as the guy that everyone thought he was going to be long term. And Gagner was a really good veteran for the Red Wings for a couple seasons there, and he's still doing really well with the Winnipeg Jets. A solid trade. Became a really good veteran presence on the Red Wings, and they didn't trade a whole ton to get him. Like I said, at the time, it probably did look like a lot, but in hindsight and looking back at it, I think it was a pretty good trade for Yzerman. Really helped the young players as well. Because Gagner is really well liked in any locker room. Like even when just a small amount of time he was in Vancouver here, a really good presence. So I'll pick that one as a good trade for Yzerman. It's funny we didn't mention the Määttä Vrana trade
Yeah.
because at the not that long ago that was probably picked as the best, but
It's probably his biggest one still. But
Oh yeah, that's a huge trade.
yeah. But I mean, right now, because of all the circumstances around it, it's not looking that good, but that could change. So
it got them Kosa.
there you go.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. So we'll have to see how that all pans out once Kosa makes his makes the NHL and hopefully becomes that number one goaltender that everyone's hoping he does become.
Yeah.
All right.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. All right, well, let's before we end the show, let's do our last off the rush question here. And this one is related to trades as well. So going up to the deadline here, like we said, it's kind of uncertain. But Delaney, what's a surprising trade you could see Yzerman making that everyone kind of goes, what did he just do?
Really good question, because the one guy that was circulating in the surprising trade talks for a while, I know you were just saying before we started recording, you're glad we're not talking about him anymore, but Bo Horvat, that was one I was kind of like keeping an eye on, like, that could be something surprising. But now I'm not sure, because I could understand him making a push for Chikrin. I could understand him making a push for Timo Meier. I'm not sure if he will. I'm trying to think of the other big names that are floating around right now. But I guess really, since I'm not thinking of one right off the bat, I'd be surprised by anything. Because he seems to be the kind of guy who just pulls the trade out of like a magic top hat and is like, surprise, and everyone's like, who was that? Where did that come from? But I don't know. Part of me, I'm just hoping, this is selfish, that he doesn't move any of the big prospects that are like right on the cusp. Like, I don't want to see Edvinsson go. I don't want to see Kosa go. I don't want to see any of those prospects go necessarily, unless the return was like undeniably going to make this team better right this second. And I don't think there's one name coming to mind that's feasible for that.
All right.
So,
Devin, what do you think? Surprising trade that Yzerman could just pull out of his, like you say, his top hat and surprise everyone with.
So the thought isn't surprising, because I'm going to say like he's going to get like a really good prospect, and it's kind of what people are expecting he would do.
Yeah.
But I'm going to name a specific prospect. I'm going to say that he's going to acquire Logan Stankoven from the Dallas Stars.
Ooh.
And I know that would gain your approval, Matt, because you're a big Stankoven fan. Rumor has it that Dallas is one of the teams that is interested in Tyler Bertuzzi, and that would be a really good get if that's what they were. If they moved Bertuzzi for Stankoven, I think that trade would pay out or would end up looking really good for. We'd be talking about that 5 years from now, and best deals that Yzerman made. That would be one of them. So I will say Yzerman somehow manages to get Stankoven out of Dallas.
I love it. That's great. I would approve that trade all day. So yeah, I don't know. Like I say, we talked about Tyler Bertuzzi on the last episode about what his value could be and what teams would be willing to trade for him. I think Stankoven's a pretty big one. So, I mean, it would be surprising if they got him for Bertuzzi, because, like I say, Bertuzzi's value isn't as high as it used to be. But yeah, that'd be a surprising one for sure.
yeah. He lost at least 2 hands of his value already. So
yeah,
literally.
All right. Well, we'll see. I mean, the trade deadline just around the corner. We'll find out pretty quick if any of this happens. We'll have one episode or a couple. Let's see how many we'll have. We'll have one, because March 3rd is the deadline. So we could be recording. We'll be recording an episode after the deadline. So that's we've got one more. So we'll be talking trade deadline preview will be next week. We're going to have a full preview on the trade deadline. We'll see if Yzerman's done any trades by then, because some of the big ones seem to happen way before the actual day. So we'll have to see. It's going to be interesting. And then we'll be talking draft, which is extra fun. I mean, I think Red Wings fans maybe were hoping that the Red Wings will be lower and get a bigger draft pick, because right now it looks like it's going to be in the mid-range, which is okay for this draft. I think it's going to be still pretty good, but we'll have to see what all happens, because we still got a couple weeks before that deadline. But until then, make sure checking out that Hockey Writers Hockeypedia page. Lots of great information there. Grows every day. We've got any question you have about hockey, you'll probably find the answer there. So make sure to check out Hockeypedia. And thanks, Devin. Thanks, Delaney, for joining another grind line here at the Hockey Writers. And we'll see if we'll be talking about some surprising things on the next episode. But until then, we'll see you next time on another Hockey Writers grind line.